All right. Well, this is my first time streaming on multiple platforms through Riverside. So hopefully that works. And I'm just going to let everyone a couple of minutes to arrive so we can kick this off. Um, it's probably not going to last more than like 30 minutes, actually, even though I reserved the whole hour just in case, because I'm always so paranoid of the technical difficulties. But it all seems to be working just fine. And for any of you who is joining audio only, it's totally fine. I'll be sharing the recording afterwards. I do have a screen share activated for my presentation, but it's not really visually heavy, so you don't have to be looking at the screen. Anyways, hopefully everybody is doing great today. And for me, the joke of the day is that I always say how intimidated I am by the content on LinkedIn, where everybody seems to be somehow making like millions overnight. And I just yesterday enrolled into this super cool course by Yale School of Business Online, obviously on decision making. And I just started watching the first module. And let me say this, I forgot how academia can be a lot more intimidating than anything else. But the course is really cool. So if anybody in the audience is a decision making nerd like me, I would highly recommend it. It is investment, but I think it's totally worth it. So, anyways, we're 3 minutes into the live, and I'm just gonna roll with this. So, the topic of today's workshop is learn to decide like a unicorn, and I think you probably realize what it means, right? So, unicorns are those startups that just have a crazy level of scale. And sometimes it happens, quote unquote, overnight. Sometimes it takes more time. But, anyways, there is one thing that those companies have really nailed down. And spoiler alert, it's not product market fit. I'll tell you exactly what it is over the next few slides. There are two numbers that I wanted to share with you today. It's 35,000 and 46%. They probably sound like totally random numbers until I actually give you context. With the context being 35,000 is the average number of decision a person makes every day. That sounds like a lot, right? And now if we overlay that with 46%, which is the percentage of companies that go bankrupt due to ineffective decision making by their leaders, that all of a sudden paints a really bad picture, right? And these numbers all of a sudden make it very clear why decision making practice is not something that should be thought of as some mandatory continuous education for mid-level managers at enterprises. And most founders unfortunately think that their hardest calls are about fundraising, hiring, finance models, like all the vertical skills that you can name. But they're all really symptoms of the same problem, which is decision design. And I know it for a fact because I've been head of growth 7 times. And I've also coached over 50 founders along the way. And what separates true scales up from startups that stall isn't luck. It's their decision repeatability. Now, here's another stat, 90%, and you've probably all heard about it. 90% of all startups fail. And you're seeing the breakdown on the screen. I mean, absence of product market fit, bad hiring decisions, competition, timing, etc. But the invisible common denominator here is really decision quality. Each of this is a decision problem. Choosing the wrong market, misallocating cash, hiring poorly, underestimating competitors, mistiming launch. Yet nobody says train your decision-making muscle. Everyone says build product faster, raise more capital, hire better. But the one muscle that drives all of it is how you decide, and it's almost never talked about. Okay, so let's define this clearly. When I say decision architecture, I'm actually talking about two very distinct things. First of them is agency. You don't want to be the victim of your own poor decision hygiene, basically making choices reactively or repeating mistakes without realizing it. Second one is awareness. You need to recognize poor decision hygiene in others, whether it's a co-founder pushing a biased idea or an investor giving feedback that's really more about their thesis than your business. And under those two pillars, there are four trainable muscles of the decision fitness, as I call it. So the first one is pattern fluency. This is basically the ability to notice and recognize when you're at a decision-making point. Many founders just react. They don't even realize they're deciding. The second one is bias awareness. Basically, knowing that correlation is not causation, or when you're falling into groupthink. I'll go into more detail on the next few slides. Third one is scenario fluency. Basically equals to simulating outcomes. It's not just asking what do we want, but what happens if we do this. And the last, but by no means not least, is what I call reflection or error fluency. It's the muscle of learning from your own past choices instead of rushing onto the next fire. So this is really not some abstract philosophy. These are practical, trainable skills that compound just like physical fitness. All right, so let's look at the first muscle that is called pattern fluency. It's the ability to recognize when you're actually making a decision. Most founders I work with are constantly reacting to customer emails, investor feedback, Slack messages, feature requests, you name it. They treat all of this as tasks. But underneath, many of them are actually decisions. And when you fail to name them as such, you lose the opportunity to make them deliberately. Let's look at this example. Imagine a customer says, okay, we would totally sign a contract if you build this integration. And most early stage founders immediately think that this is a to-do item. But that's actually a decision that needs to be made. Meaning, do we prioritize this request over roadmap? And does this customer actually represent our ICP, or is it just a noisy edge case? The real trap is that when you treat decisions as tasks, you default to habit. You build features because you got a loud request. You hire because somebody referred a friend. You spend because a competitor announced funding. Those aren't reflex tasks. They're strategic choices. So how can you train pattern fluency in real time? Well, there are quite few very easy steps. So the first one is labeling decisions explicitly. What I recommend to the founders that I coach is basically really just keeping a decision log, or even say Slack emoji that marks this is a decision, not a task. Second one is the magic word pause. So literally just pausing before reacting to something, like taking 60 seconds to ask, am I reacting or am I deciding? That pause alone changes the outcome, because all of a sudden you can step out of your own head and realize whether or not this is a fire that needs to be put out, or is a decision that needs to be made where consequences need to be pondered over. And very much attached to the previous one is separating choices from fires. Urgent issues like server outage obviously require instant attention or instant reaction. But most things that feel urgent, like customer demands, investor comments, internal debates, are actually choices, and they deserve conscious framing. Pattern fluency is the entry point of decision fitness. And if you cannot spot decision moments, you'll never be able to filter bias, simulate outcomes, or reflect on quality. Step one is simply noticing. Am I deciding right now, or am I just reacting? All right, muscle number two um, is spotting biases. And I'm going to review two most common biases that I've seen across really many different startups. So, confusing patterns with truth. This one is one of the most common traps founders fall into. Basically, thinking that correlation equals causation. Say you see a spike in the metrics and your brain immediately invents a story to explain it. I think a classic case here would be a story from Slack. Many assume that Slack grew because of a TechCrunch article. In reality, their growth came from controlled previews, obsessive onboarding, and the viral loop between the teams. The press was visible, but it was not what caused the adoption. Or take Airbnb, for example. From the outside, people thought that it was, I guess, what they call brand magic. In truth, two mechanics drove the inflection. A Craigslist supply hack. Basically, they were double posting their listings on Craigslist when it was popular back then, and also professional photography. Basically, offering professional photography to the hosts, and that doubled their conversion rates. If you only looked at bookings, you would like a total number of bookings, you would miss the real levers. So, how do you avoid this trap in real time? There are 5 really quick filters. Asking yourself what else has changed. Meaning don't anchor on the obvious. Make a simple change log. Product releases, price tweaks, competitor actions, seasonality, you name it. And ask, was anything else moving that could explain this? Again, don't anchor to the most obvious thing. Second step is segment before storytelling. Always cut by different segments such as ICP, region, plan tier, cohort, etc. When you top line everything, it hides the truth. Airbnb only spotted photography impact when they actually segmented the listings. Step number 3 is counterfactual check. If this event had not happened, what would we expect? Say, for example, compare regions that didn't get certain PI exposure or users that did not receive the latest feature release. Step number 4 is consistency over time. Signal repeats and noise fades. A churn dip 1 week might be nothing, but if it holds at day 30, day 60, that's a signal. And last but not least step in this process is weight by priors. Ask yourself, how likely was this before the event? Say, if you already had organic growth momentum, don't give 100% credit to the new feature or press hit. Remember, stories are seductive because they're fast. And decision fitness is about slowing down just enough to run these 5 filters. Do that, and you'll avoid wasting months chasing noise. All right, trap number 2 is my favorite, infamous confirmation bias. As founders, we all fall in love with our own narrative. And once we do, we really hunt for data to prove it. I'll give you story number 1. Theranos. It's an extreme case. Mrs. Holmes ignored contrary data and surrounded herself with yes men. That's an extreme example, but the principle holds. If you only let confirming evidence in, you can fool yourself for years. Second story is also one of my favorites. It's basically Netflix versus Blockbuster. In early 2000s, Blockbuster dismissed Netflix's data that customers wanted mail order rentals, seeing only data that supported their in-store model. They doubled down on late fees, and we all know how that ended. And story number 3 is the everyday founder trap. A startup founder hears 3 potential customers say, "Oh my God, I would love that feature," and takes it as validation. But those customers aren't really ICP. Oh, they'll never pay. The founder ignores the 20 people who said that this is not for me. I mean, I've seen this happen in real life as well. So, how do you avoid this really? Again, there are 5 filters. First one is seek disconfirming evidence. Basically, after every yes, actively look for a no. Ask yourself, what would make this idea fail? Second one is again one of my favorites. I call it assembling a red team or devil's advocate. Basically, assign somebody on the team to argue against the idea. If you only have a very small team, make sure to rotate the role so that that person doesn't feel uncomfortable doing it all the time. Third step is beware of small anecdotes. Basically, as I was saying, 3 loud voices don't mean market validation. Ask yourself, is this statistically meaningful or is it just convenient noise that confirms what I already believe into? Step number 4 is separating data from interpretation. For example, 10 people churned last week. You're seeing it in the data. And you immediately saying, okay, they churned because of pricing, like without even questioning about the real reason. So make sure you look for qualitative data, not just quantitative data, before you make the conclusions. And last but not least, sounds like a cliche, but involve diverse perspectives. Do not just hire mini U's because that's just going to end up in an echo chamber. Bring in people with different backgrounds who see your blind spots that you're not able to see yourself. So I think at this point it's clear that confirmation bias is very dangerous because it feels really good and is the hardest one to spot. It rewards us with false certainty. And decision fitness means training yourself to pause and ask, am I hunting for truth or am I just collecting evidence that lets me sleep better tonight? All right, muscle number 3, scenario fluency. How do you train that in real time? Well, step number 1 is running what if scenarios. Basically, again, asking yourself, if we do X, what happens to revenue, churn, or team focus in 3 to 6 months? And keep asking the what if until you arrive at the final answer. Then compare options with simple models. Don't overcomplicate it. You can use ICE, which basically translates to impact, confidence, effort, RISE, or jobs to be done. Make assumptions explicit. Always write down this only works if. Then you know what to monitor post-decision. Scenario fluency isn't about predicting the future. It's about forcing your brain to see ahead of your leap. Basically, if you explicitly name the consequences, all of a sudden, the decision seems a lot more important. Don't say, okay, let's do it and see what happens, because we all know how that ends. And if pattern fluency is about noticing the decision, then scenario fluency is about really recognizing the consequences. Together, they keep you from basically committing blind. Last but not least, the final muscle of decision fitness is reflection, or what I call error fluency. This is about systematically learning from our past decisions. Most founders are so focused on speed that they never really look back. A decision is made, things happen, and they move on. The problem is that without reflection, your organization never compounds learning. You just repeat the same mistake over and over again, faster. I'll give you a few examples. I worked with a founder who cut their sales team in half to save runway. In the short term, it looked smart. Burn dropped, runaway doubled. But at hindsight, revenue momentum stalled and churn spiked. The decision looked good because the outcome, which translated into more cash, felt right immediately, but the decision quality was actually poor. They had not tested else. Remember this. What seems like a good outcome doesn't mean good decision quality. Example number two, conversely, sometimes good decisions actually lead to bad outcomes. You run a controlled experiment with some solid logic, but the market just moves unexpectedly. That doesn't make it a bad decision. But reflection is what lets you see the process separately from lack of external circumstances. So, how do you train the reflection muscle in real time? Well, you separate decision quality from outcome quality. Ask, was the decision making process sound or was it just dumb luck? Second step, log assumptions before acting. Now, this is the third time I mentioned logging something in. And surely I know that any time spent writing anything down seems like a waste of time, but trust me, try it for a couple of weeks and you'll see the changes. Even if you make it into like 2-3 bullet points. For example, we believe that this will reduce churn if activation improves by 15%. And then revisit it later. Actually assign the date on which you're going to come back and evaluate this. And run lightweight postmortems. After mid-size or obviously big bets, ask, what did we expect here and what actually happened? What will we change next time? Even really 10 minutes is enough. Reflection is unfortunately the least practiced muscle, but it's what makes decision fitness compound. Without it, you're really just running in circles. And with it, every decision becomes a training rep. And your startup's decision muscle only gets stronger over time. So let's bring it all together. Decision fitness isn't a checklist, it's a cycle. Every strong decision maker is unconsciously running this loop. Let's recall the steps. Step one, spot. Pattern fluency. Are you recognizing that this is a decision moment or are you just reacting? If you don't spot it, the rest of the loop never happens. Step number two, filter. Bias awareness. Once you've named it as a decision, you run it through bias filters. Correlation versus causation, confirmation bias, groupthink, etc. This is where you protect yourself from bad reasoning. Step number three, project. Scenario fluency. You don't just choose the option that feels right. You simulate the outcomes. What if we expand to Europe? What if we switch pricing? You surface assumptions, stress test outcomes, and compare options systematically. Last but not least, step number four, reflect. Error fluency. After the decision plays out, you revisit it. Was it a good process or just a lucky outcome? Did our assumptions hold? What did we learn that we can carry into the next loop? This cycle compounds, and every rep through makes you sharper. Miss just one step, and you're either flying blind or repeating mistakes or making the same errors faster. Well, here is the thing. Decision fitness is like any other workout. You don't get abs by going to the gym once. And you don't get sharp decisions just by hoping you'll figure it out. You've got to be at it continuously every single week, if not every single day. And some founders build their own rituals. Some need a coach, some need tools. Well, that's why I built a tool of my own called Vivra, a way to actually practice decision fitness, not just to think about it. And obviously, a small shameless plug. I'll be running my first decision fitness cohort next month. And if you want to train these muscles with me and a group of other founders, scan the QR code on the page if you're joining from desktop, and I'll also be dropping the link into the description once the recording goes out, and you'll be notified the moment that the signups go live. Remember, your product is what you build, and your growth is what you decide. So train that muscle. All right. So how did I do? Whoa, 25 minutes. That was great. I actually have no idea how to manage questions on Riverside. I'll have to get that bit figured out next time I do this. So, in the meantime, feel free to drop them as comments on whichever platform that you're watching this on, and I'll get back with you. Thank you to everybody who has joined, and to everyone who hasn't, I hope you will enjoy the recording.